Starting us off tonight is none other than Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Governor Walz, when I saw the news this morning, you were the first person I thought of, given everything you have been through, everything you have lived through, and the people of your state have lived through. So Kristi Noem is obviously on her way out. You've lived through so much on her watch. What was your reaction this morning? What's been your reaction to the news?
Well, good to be with you, Jen. Good news has been kind of scarce since Kristi Noem and Donald Trump's folks showed up in December. And so glad she's gone, but I think you understand it and everybody else does. It's the people who are putting them in place, a rogues gallery of incompetent, cruel cabinet secretaries, and this one was particularly loathsome. But what I think we need to make clear is the damage that she's done here and continues to do. I remind your viewers that there's still 650 of these folks here. We're trying to recover from this, and it's going to take us years, and it may be generational trauma on our children. We don't know where our kids are at. We need answers. And so I'm glad she's gone, but it gives us an inflection point. And this is what I would really encourage Congress to do their job, Republicans in Congress. And as you're talking about, whether it's Senator Mullen, whoever it is, put the guardrails on right now. We need to be part of the investigations into Renee and Alex's death. We need to know where our children are at. We need them to quit taking Minnesota's money. So, I do think it's okay to celebrate at times. And former Secretary Noem and I go way back, and the trouble started long before this when she chose not to address COVID and spread COVID throughout the upper Midwest, killing people across the area. And this incompetency then to be picked. I think it's really interesting what you said was she wasn't fired for killing Alex or Renee or being in charge of that. She wasn't fired for taking children. She wasn't fired for dragging American citizens out of their home with no shoes in underwear when it's 20 below zero. They only make changes when it becomes politically problematic for them, because they're not going to change what they want to do. They still want these mass deportations. Stephen Miller is still there whispering in the president's ear, and they still believe they don't need warrants. They still believe they don't need to give us accountability for murdered Minnesotans. And so I think this is an inflection point that Kristi Noem was incompetent. She was cruel. She was terrible. But the institution at DHS and what was carried out and what the White House is saying, that's what needs to be addressed.
As you noted, and I think it's so important for people to remember, and everybody watching followed what happened in your state, was still happening in your state so closely. She's no longer going to be in the cabinet. What should accountability for Kristi Noem, given everything she's done, look like in your view?
Well, and there needs to be, and I think that's one of our founding principles, that no one's above the law and they're accountable. I would just say at this time that former Secretary Noem should probably get used to spending more time in Minnesota, because I have a pretty good feeling in the future she may be doing that, because we have got to get accountability. We need to know the people who are involved in this, and the ones that were caught on tape, and the brave Minnesotans. And again, they're out of Minnesota because Minnesotans took to the streets, and it turns out they like their constitutional rights. They like to protect their neighbors' human rights. And that's what Minnesotans did. And we need accountability on every single one of those. So from whether it's the murder of Renee and Alex, whether it's why Liam Ramos ended up in Texas, why we don't know where some of our children are, why they tell stories where a gentleman with a fractured skull tripped and fell in detainment, and the hundreds of other aggressions, all the way down to, gassing of children with chemical munitions out there. It's ridiculous. And at this point in time, and I was on the Hill yesterday testifying in one of their diversions, Kristi Noem's down the way being asked to simply state calling Renee and Alex domestic terrorists is incredibly painful for Minnesotans and their family. And she doesn't even have the decency to do that. And so here's my question is, well, maybe the president could do that for her. Maybe the president could say, you're right, that's why she's gone, we would do this. So I don't know, on a day like this, I'm glad she's gone, but they just keep lining up sycophants. There's one qualification for this job, and that's loyalty to Donald Trump. And your story there of saying that, when she shot Cricket, all the rest of us are, of course, horrified by this, whatever. Donald Trump thinking that would be good for border security, boy, there's a psychology study right there of what they think about this. And that's the way they've approached this. The whole operation in Minnesota has been cruelty.
It tells you so much. I just want to ask you about something you just said, because I think accountability is something so many people are hungry for in this country. When you say she should expect to spend more time in Minnesota, what do you mean by that? Tell people watching what you mean by that.
Well, look, our folks are going to be looking into each and every one of these incidents that happened. We're going to want answers. Who gave the orders to do this? Who said that these folks could do that? Why within 20 minutes before understanding what happened, she found the need to slander Minnesotans, American citizens? Why did they not retract that? And why were Minnesota investigators at the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension not allowed to be on these scenes? Where's the evidence? We need the evidence to do this. And I know both County Attorney Moriarty, I know Attorney General Ellison. People are looking for accountability. That's what the system is. This isn't, as Donald Trump is, he came here on retribution. We're not looking for retribution. We're looking for justice. And we're looking to make sure that no one's above the law. So Kristi Noem, it sure seems to me there's a lot of unanswered questions. I wrote her in early December asking about the detainments. I wrote her in January, and I wrote her again this week, and I have not received an answer. We have children who we don't know where they're at. They're still unaccounted for. And I know that whether it's the war or it's Epstein or everything else, folks are moving on. We're still in the midst of this. She was still, until this morning, in charge of that, and they chose to totally ignore us. They chose not to answer. They don't believe they're accountable. And so I can't say it enough. Don't give them any money. Don't confirm a DHS secretary. Continue to drag them in front of you and put the guardrails around. If a DHS, ICE, Border Patrol, whoever it is, federal agent is involved in the killing or violence or violating constitutional rights, the states have to be able to be part of that investigation. And at this point in time, they're stonewalling us. And if you recall, on the third shooting we had here where the gentleman shot in the leg, she went after that. That was a planned attack. And that night she said she held me accountable as a domestic terrorist for encouraging them. Well, lo and behold, they were lying. And now those folks are supposed to be under investigation. But our folks were driven off that scene with the gas that was being thrown by ICE. So there's a lot of unanswered questions. And I think the way this White House operates is we'll get rid of this, we'll talk about something else, we'll flood the zone, and people will forget about it. I think what I'm saying to Kristi Noem is we will never forget. We will never rest until we get justice for the people that were harmed in this. And if we don't, and all the rest of your listeners, this is coming to your state. We were a testing ground, and the people of Minnesota pushed back, but they'll just do it in the dark. They'll make it more difficult. So I don't think we've had the fundamental changes that we need to ensure that border security is done right. And again, this false, narrative of, well, you don't care about, violent criminals being on the street. Of course we do. But I don't think a 5-year-old boy in a bunny hat was the one you were going after. I don't think Alex Preddy, a VA nurse, or Renee Good, a mom just driving home. We know that this thing was botched, but they didn't fire her after that. They fired her after a disastrous testimony, and as you said, promoting herself to be president. So there's a lot more work to be done, and I don't think anybody should lose focus on this. There's one person responsible for all this, and that's the president.
You are definitely not losing focus. We will keep focus on it as well. It sounds like you're saying, and I don't know, I talked a little bit about Senator Mark Wayne Mullen. I'm not sure how familiar you are with his background, but it sounds like you're saying you really want Democrats in the Senate to hold up this nomination, given how ICE is continuing to terrorize communities, including those in Minnesota. Is that what I should be hearing from you?
Yes.
Or was that what I was hearing from you?
Yeah. No, it is what you're hearing, Jen. They need to make the changes now. This is their job. Rein in this rogue agency and make them sit in front of you and answer the questions. And my demand for all the senators who are voting, don't vote for anything until they let us be part of the investigation into these murders and these crimes. What we need to know. And I am familiar with Senator Mullen, and I would characterize us as friendly. I would have characterized Senator or former Secretary Noem as friendly, but they kind of change when they get in Donald Trump's orbit. People that I worked with in the House, and I'm not going to pass judgment on Senator Mullen at this time because he and I did get along. We were friendly. We did some charity work. We did the congressional football game to raise money for fallen police officers. So I do have a history there, but if you put him back into the same organization that is meant to terrorize, being taught, you're training these guys in less than 40 days, and you're telling them that they don't have to have judicial warrants to enter homes, and you're telling them there's no accountability. And I will remind folks, In the hours after the murder of Renee Good, the Vice President of the United States claimed they had absolute immunity, which was basically a blank check to do whatever, and they did. They did for 10 days. They terrorized the state like we have probably never seen. So I can just tell you that the people of Minnesota demand accountability, and this is a moment in time to demand that, because if you just plug another sycophant into that job, they're going to do the same thing.
Sounds like a lot of his rhetoric is similar. We will certainly see, but it sounds also like you are going to keep at this, which does not surprise me at all. Governor Tim Walz, thank you so much for being here with me tonight.
Thanks, Jen.